All right. So 3B.1 factoring review. And I know I'm calling it a review, but I've also accepted that it may not be. Okay. So let's dive in. The first part, you do not have to write down. We're gonna just we're starting off with factoring. Does anyone remember what GCF stands for? Greatest common factor in simple trinomials. So we're gonna be factoring using the greatest common factor. When we are factoring a polynomial, it means expressing it as a product of other polynomials. Okay. Polynomials are just expressions where you're adding and subtracting multiple terms. That's it. That's a polynomial. Got it? It's just expressions where you're adding and subtracting multiple expressions for the most part. We'll dive a little deeper into the formal definition later, but don't be overwhelmed by the word polynomial. So our first method is factoring polynomials with a common monomial. Okay. Monomial means that it's only one term. Does that make sense? Mono meaning one. So a monomial, and that's going to be called, that monomial is our greatest common factor, our GCF. So in your first box, you're going to write down 15m squared minus 9. Writing down 15m squared minus 9. Notice that the first thing it asks us, what is the GCF? The GCF, remember, is your greatest common factor. What is the largest number that evenly divides between 15 and 9? What's my largest number? 3. So therefore, my GCF is 3. Okay. So step one is to decide what is the greatest common factor. And because there's only common numbers in each term, we only are worried about the number. Okay. Now you're going to divide your GCF. Divide by the GCF. So you're dividing 15 by 3 and 9 by 3. What is 15 divided by 3? 5. We're going to leave the m squared. And what is 9 divided by 3? 3. So that is my quotient. So when I divide, I'm left with a quotient. When you write it in factored form, you write it as the GCF times the quotient. And that is your factored form. So what was our GCF? 3. What was our quotient? 5m squared minus 3. And ta-da! You factored. Questions about so far? All right, so this is an example where there isn't a variable in both terms, right? So guess what our next example is going to be? If you set a variable in both terms, you are so correct. Am I going too fast? Are we okay? Okay, so in box 2, you're going to write 5x squared plus 10x. So we're doing 5x squared plus 10x. All right, we're still going to start off the same. It says find the GCF. So we're going to look for the GCF. Now we have variables in both terms. So we're going to have to look for the GCF, our numerical GCF, and our variable GCF. Got it? What is our numerical GCF? What is the largest number you can divide equally into 5 and 10? 5. So our numerical GCF is 5. When you're looking at variables, you're looking at what is your smallest variable power. Okay. Reason being is that if um, I have x squared and I have x, right? What this becomes means that I have an x times an x over a x. In the numerator and denominator, they only have how many x's in common? 1, right? Do we see that? So that's why when you're comparing variables, you're only looking for what is the smallest variable power. And my smallest variable power is x to the 1. So therefore, my variable GCF is x. Make sense? Okay, so now we have our GCF. Now we're going to divide by our GCF, and that helps us find our quotient. So we're going to divide 5x squared by 5x, divide 10x by 5x. You see nothing. You see nothing. My eraser's taking too long. By 5x. You probably have a little more room where you can rewrite it. I don't, so I'm just squeezing it in up here. So we have 5x squared divided by 5x. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. X squared divided by x. Going back to our exponent rules, you're subtracting their powers, right? 2 minus 1 is 1, right? Plus 10 divided by 5 is 2. And what happens to x to the 1 and x to the 1? They cancel out. So this is what I'm left with. So when I rewrite, remember you're rewriting as your GCF times your quotient. So my GCF was 5x. My simplified quotient is x plus 2. So this is my factored form. Yes. Not terrible, right? Okay. All right, let's try another one. Okay. Finding our GCF. So again, because I have variables in all three terms, I have to check to see if they have common variables. Okay. So numerical. What is my numerical GCF? What is the largest number that equally divides into 4, 6, and 14? 2. Perfect. So we have 2. Now we're going to look at our variables. For my variables, what is my smallest power? 1, x to the 1. Because remember, Casper the friendly one, if it's not there, it's still there, right? Okay, so my monomial GCF is 2 times x. Now we're going to divide everything by your GCF. All right, so we're going to divide each term by 2x. So we're dividing this by 2x, dividing by 2x, dividing by 2x. I like to write it out. You don't have to write it out if you can visually do it, okay? So we have 4 divided by 2 is 2. X to the 5th divided by x is x to the 4. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. X to the 3rd divided by x is x squared. And 14 divided by 2 is 7. And what happens to x to the 1 and x to the 1? They cancel out. So my rewrite is my GCF times my quotient. So we have 2x times 2x to the 4 minus 3x squared plus 7. And that is your factored form. It's not terrible. Still with me? Yes. Question, comment, or concern? Okay. All right. What happens if there's multiple variables? Well, that just means you may have multiple GCF variables. Okay. Variable GCFs. So the other thing we're going to talk about is negative. If your leading coefficient is negative, if leading coefficient is negative, then your GCF is negative. Okay. If your leading coefficient is negative, then your GCF is going to also be negative. Okay. So number 4, we have negative 8a squared b c squared minus 12a times b squared times c squared. Okay. Notice here in this case, our leading coefficient is negative. So that means our GCF is going to be negative. Okay, now you're just talking about the numbers. What is the largest number that evenly divides into 8 and 12? 4. Perfect. So we have -4. Okay, because you have multiple variables, you're going to look at each variable and compare. We have a squared, a to the 1, which is smallest. A to the 1. We have b and b squared, which is the smallest. B. We have c squared and c squared. They're the same, so they're both in common. Was that terrible? Yep. Okay, now you're going to divide. So you're dividing both terms by -4ab squared. Divide by -4ab squared. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, so we end up with +2. A to the 2 divided by a is just a. B divided by b does what? Cancels out. C squared divided by c squared does what? Cancels out. So the first term is done. Now we're on to our second term. A -12 divided by -4 is +3. A divided by a cancels out. B squared divided by b is b. And c squared divided by c squared cancels out. So your rewrite is your GCF times your quotient. My GCF is -4abc squared. And my quotient is 2a plus 3b. And that is the factored form of that. Yes. Okay, guess whose turn it is? I know, crazy. Who knew it was coming down to you? Here you go. In box 5, you're going to write down 3x to the 4 minus 9x cubed y plus 6x squared y squared. And you're going to go through the process of writing it in factor form. Austin. Work. Your turn.
Oh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
GPS?
Yes. And write the factor form.
Oh, how?
No, you write it on your paper.
Yeah.
All right. So what's my GCF? 3x squared. Good job. Why not the y?
In the first one?
It's not in the first one. You're so smart, guys. All right. What's my quotient? X squared minus 3xy plus what? 2y squared. So your factored form should have came out to be 3x squared times x squared minus 3xy plus 2y squared. Okay. Remember, it's a common factor, which means that it has to be in all of the terms, right? If it's not in all of them, then it's not in common. All right. Ready for the last box?
Write down the.
Because you started reading, buddy. Just be honest. Because you started reading.
I didn't, I was trying to figure out whether or not I think it was why.
All right. Here's y'all's number 6 and your 6 box. You're going to write down 15x cubed times y squared times z plus 20x squared times y times z squared. And all right. So we have variables and numerical. What was our numerical GCF? We have 5, we have x squared, we have y, and we have z. Agreed? So we're going to divide each one of these by 5x squared yz, 5x squared yz. 15 divided by 5 should have given you 3. X cubed divided by x squared gives you x. Y squared divided by y gives you y. And what happens to the z's? They cancel out. Then we have 20 divided by 5, which is 4. X squared and x squared cancels out. We have y, and they cancel out. And then we have z squared divided by z, which is just z. So our factored form is 5x squared yz times 3xy plus 4z. How do you feel about factoring out a monomial? Good? Awesome.
Good morning,